public statements by the former Commissioner of Police and both the former and current Ministers of Police regarding former Deputy Commissioner Jiwon McSkimming. Urgent debates are a way of holding the current government accountable for an action for which it is responsible. So an urgent debate cannot be held on matters for which a previous government had some responsibility. Urgent debates are not a means through which to discover what a minister knew or why they said something. That is the role of parliamentary questions. The application is declined. We come to oral question. The first name of Chris Hipkins, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes. Supplementary question.
Well, to our friends in the gallery, that was an impromptu performance, a little bit of poetry and lots of performative art as well. I think we'll now progress to questions for oral answer. The first in the name of the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Who actually speaks for the government? The Prime Minister, who says that he wants, quote, modest, consistent house price increases, end quote, or the Housing Minister, Chris Bishop, who says the government is, quote, trying to drive house prices down, end quote?
Well, what this government doesn't want is a 30% growth in house prices in a single year, as we experienced under the last government. House prices have come down, I think about 13% on average. And what we want to see is gradual, moderate, consistent house price growth, while we want to see wage growth obviously growing faster than house price appreciation.
So was Chris Bishop wrong when he said only recently, quote, the government was, quote, trying to drive house prices down, end quote?
Well, what this government is doing is we are radically increasing the supply of land available for housing, and I would just say to that member, I would put our record on housing up against his any day of the week, because housing is more affordable for purchase. Rentals, you just remember house prices went up 30% in a single year under Labor. Rents went up $180 a week. There was 5,000 fewer people now on social housing wait lists under this government. Kids are out of motel rooms, and actually this government's record on housing beats his record any day of the week.
So when Nicola Willis said, quote, I agree with him that house prices need to fall, I'm with him, end quote, was she admitting that her alignment on housing policy is with Chris Bishop and not the Prime Minister?
Well, this is a country that has been experiencing a housing crisis for many, many years, and it's a function of having not enough supply in the market. It is not a demand-side problem, it's a supply-side problem. And that's why I'm very proud of what this government's doing, launching its new RMA reforms today to make sure that we can actually get more houses built for New Zealanders. And I think that members should be thankful that we have actually done a good job of making sure house price affordability is down. That's a good thing. Rentals are down. That's a good thing. Not up $180 a week. We've got 5,000 fewer families on the social housing wait list now in housing. We've got 3,000 kids and families out of emergency housing. I'm proud of our record on housing.
Supplementary?
Supplementary, Honourable David Seymour.
Is it the government's desire that wages grow faster than house prices, and that requires sound economic management from this government?
Absolutely, and that's what I was saying in answer to the first question, which is that we want to see wage growth, income growth be faster and higher than house price growth, so it becomes more affordable.
So what is the government's policy position? His position that the government wants, quote, modest, consistent house price increases. Chris Bishop's position, where he says the government is, quote, trying to drive house prices down, end quote. Or Nicola Willis's position, where she says that she agrees with Chris Bishop that house prices need to fall.
Our position is to unlock growth in this country, to open up more land available for housing so it becomes more affordable. We're not interested in Kiwi Build. Remember that one? Didn't go so good. But what we're interested in doing is systemic reform of our planning laws so that we can get more houses built so they become more affordable for people.
Supplementary question. Is his reluctance to answer the question on whether he speaks for the government on house prices or Chris Bishop or Nicola Willis speak for the government on house prices because he's not sure whether they do actually support his position?
Well, I think the bigger question the members should be concerned about is what's happening with house prices. They are more affordable than they have been under this government in 2 years than they were under his government in 6 years. What's the situation with rentals? They went up $180 a week under his government. They've come down under this government. When you think about the position on social housing, we actually have 5,000 fewer families now on a social housing wait list, and that is a good thing. We've got 3,200 families out of emergency hotels where they were sitting now in houses, and we're also supporting the homeless as well. I line up our record on every dimension, every component, any day of the week.
Just appreciate that members will be a little unsettled due to the theatrics we experienced at the beginning of question time, but do you have to keep it reasonable? That is true, I'm unsettled. Yeah.
Supplementary question. Is he not calling out Chris Bishop for contradicting him on falling house prices and not calling out Nicola Willis for saying that she's with Chris Bishop on falling house prices because she's worried that Nicola Willis is also going to end up with Chris Bishop when he tries to replace him as Prime Minister?
No, look, I'd just say I think the member should worry less about the National Party and worry about his mates in the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, don't you think? I think that's what you should be worrying about, son.
Question 2, Catherine Wedd.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister responsible for RMA reform. What announcements has he made about replacing the Resource Management Act 1991?
The Honourable Chris Bishop. Just hang on. Let him at least get a couple of words out.
Mr Speaker, today the government has announced its new planning system to replace the RMA 1991 to make it easier to build the homes and infrastructure our country needs, give farmers and growers the freedom to get on with producing world-class food and fibre and strengthen our primary sector while protecting the environment. The RMA 1991 has been a failure, has slowed down energy and infrastructure projects and has fuelled a housing crisis in a country the size of the United Kingdom but with only 7% of its population. It has created uncertainty for developers, councils, farmers and growers, yet hasn't protected the environment. The reforms announced today are a once-in-a-generation opportunity to free ourselves from a millstone that has weighed on both our economy and our environment. And of course, the foundation of the new regime is the centrepiece of liberal democracies, property rights.
Supplementary. What are the major features of the new system?
Mr Speaker, the system will need fewer and simpler consents with fewer activity categories, so low-impact activities no longer require consents. We will move from over 100 existing plans to 17 regional combined plans, integrating spatial, land use and natural environment planning. Spatial planning means 30-year regional spatial plans to identify growth areas, infrastructure corridors and areas needing protection. There will be clearer national direction and more consistency through nationally set policy direction, and the system will be more proportionate. Consent conditions must be necessary and proportionate, reducing red tape.
Supplementary. What other major features are there?
Mr Speaker, the new planning system will include more standardisation. Planned national standards on zoning and common activities will cut red tape and speed up the system. Consultation will only occur where necessary. Councils will also be required to provide practical relief mechanisms when imposing restrictions on heritage and on things like significant natural areas. A new planning tribunal will deliver faster, low-cost conflict resolution, and it will mean better environmental protection, enabling community decision-making over water quality and improving the efficient use of resources.
Supplementary. What does this mean for New Zealanders?
Mr Speaker, this all adds up to an easier, cheaper system. It means less paperwork, less cost and a faster and easier progress for those who want to do basic things like putting a deck on a house, building a fence on a farm or constructing some townhouses or even Marama Davidson, a wind farm. They mean a planning system that works for New Zealanders and their aspirations rather than against them. More land will be unlocked for housing. Long-term spatial plans will give investors certainty. For farmers, it means less red tape. Farm plans to manage environmental risks. It means making planning simpler, faster and fairer, so we can build homes, grow food, farm animals and deliver the infrastructure New Zealand needs while caring for the environment. Mr Speaker, if we get this right, the 2030s can be New Zealand's decade.
Supplementary, Simon Court.
Minister, how does introducing a regulatory relief mechanism for property owners subject to SNAs, heritage, culture and landscape overlays strengthen private property rights?
Well, Mr Speaker, I thank the Under-Secretary for his excellent question. And I just reflect on the fact that at the moment it is costless for councils to impose quite significant controls on private property. I think about my own electorate of Hutt South, where the council imposed significant natural areas, in some cases on 70 to 80 to 90% of people's private land, thus diminishing the value of that land and what they could do with that land. That was costless for the council, but comes at real cost of people and their private property rights. So we are tilting the balance back in favour of property rights by requiring councils to actually think about those things and think about offering regulatory relief in those circumstances. Individual cases and individual councils will vary, but clearly there's clearly a shift in balance back towards the idea of private property.
Simon Court.
Minister, how does introducing a planning tribunal strengthen the rights of property owners?
Well, Mr Speaker, many members of this House will have experienced people who have approached them who are having arguments with their local council about often quite simple things. Again, I think of my own electorate with a man who was arguing for 9 months with the local council about replacing the garage on his house or on his property where there was an existing garage and the council didn't like the design of the new garage. And again, almost every member of this House will have examples of people who've approached them complaining about similar experiences. Now, at the moment, you can go and complain to the council who's creating the problem in the first place, or you can go off to the Environment Court at vast expense, time and money. So the Planning Tribunal sits between the council and the Environment Court and will be like the Disputes Tribunal, which will offer low-cost access to justice for people who are being screwed over by councils. And of course, the whole point is that there'll be less ability for councils to do that because the system will manage fewer things in the first place.
How good?
Question number 3, the Honourable Barbara Edmonds.
Hello, Ogeta, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, does she agree with the Prime Minister's comments about asset sales that, quote, would take it to the election and it would be part of our program, unquote? And if so, what advice, if any, has she received on the Crown's ownership interest in state-owned companies?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr Speaker, I agree with the Prime Minister's full quote, which was, we'd take it to the election and it would be part of our program that we'd want to talk about and be upfront with New Zealanders about. The government is not selling state assets this term. As Minister of Finance, my job is to ensure the Crown's $500 billion asset base is working for New Zealand. What we are doing is asking whether the assets we own are performing and how we can get better value for taxpayers. When the government took office in November 2023, Treasury proactively advised in its briefing to incoming shareholding and responsible ministers that ministers should consider being clearer about the purposes of the Crown's ownership of several government-owned companies. Treasury noted that, quote, OECD guidelines recommend that countries also set out an ownership policy statement, and many OECD countries do so. Shareholding ministers accepted Treasury's suggestion and have been receiving advice on the ownership purposes of a number of Crown-owned companies. This advice has not been considered by Cabinet.
Supplementary. Has she requested any further advice on options to sell state-owned assets?
Well, Mr Speaker, as I've said, we are evaluating the Crown balance sheet, which I would point out Crown companies are a very small portion of. New Zealanders collectively own many assets, which are social assets: schools, hospitals, houses, roads. And I would point out to the member that it is the case, for example, that on our watch, Kāinga Ora has sold many multi-million-dollar homes in Ponsonby and Herne Bay so that they can reuse the proceeds to build homes in areas of highest need. Similarly, under the last government, Kiwibank sold Kiwi Wealth, releasing $225 million in capital to improve its growth prospects, and potentially increasing lending to New Zealanders by 14%.
Point of order, the Honourable Karen McAnulty.
Thank you, Sir. The question was a relatively straightforward one. Has she sought any additional advice? We're none the wiser as to whether that is the case. That particular aspect of the question was not addressed by that long answer.
Well, I think the start was by saying that what the government has decided to do. I think you can go around this stuff forever, but have another sup.
Are all Associate Ministers of Finance receiving all the advice on the ownership interest in state-owned assets? If not, why not?
Depend on the advice, but as I made very clear in my answer to the primary question, all advice will be taken to Cabinet, and Cabinet collectively will make decisions about the ownership statements. That has not yet occurred.
Supplementary. Is it an appropriate use of public sector resources to do the groundwork on asset sales, given the government has ruled out asset sales this term?
Well, Mr Speaker, I utterly reject that assertion. The member is confusing basic financial stewardship with privatisation, because unlike the previous government, we take seriously our role as stewards of public assets, and we believe it is in the interests of New Zealand taxpayers to ensure they are performing well and to their purpose. And where they are not performing well or to their purpose, you can bet we will be holding their boards and chairpeople to account for lifting that performance on behalf of New Zealanders. You sat back, let them underperform. We won't do that.
Nasty. Supplementary. Will she rule out asset sales while she is Minister of Finance?
Well, Mr Speaker, the Crown has made very clear that we will not be selling Crown companies this term, and what I've also made clear it is the case that we have, for example, sold multi-million-dollar homes previously owned by Kāinga Ora so that we can recycle that capital into better value homes for people in need. This is consistent with the practice of the previous government, which also did the same thing, selling assets owned by Kāinga Ora to put the dollars to better purposes. It is also the case that within entities that the Crown owns, from time to time, they will divest some of their assets in order to better recycle that capital, as is the primary example, Kiwi Wealth, a $225 million asset owned by Kiwibank, sold by the previous government, with the proceeds recycled into Kiwi Wealth. Mr Hipkins says that's not true, Mr Speaker. I can assure him the statements I make in this House are accurate.
Supplementary.
Hang on. question being asked.
Supplementary. How many homes has she funded and built this year from the recycling of the funding from the sales she mentioned in her previous response?
Well, Mr Speaker, that's a question both probably better put to the Minister of Housing and better put in writing. But what I can confirm is that on this government's watch, we have delivered more social homes in our first 2 years in office than the last government did in 3.
Supplementary question. Supplementary question.
Hang on.
Supplementary question.
No, hang on. That will see you leaving the House.
Supplementary question.
Well, if you're going to stand by it, then you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. Think of another way of putting it.
Supplementary question.
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Can the Minister of Finance confirm that the proceeds from the sale of the house in Trinity Street, Ponsonby, next to Lord's Mansion, has funded the retrofit of six to seven other Kāinga Ora properties in Auckland?
I can confirm that, Mr Speaker, and what I am surprised to also have to confirm to members of this House today is that there are some members here who would prefer we sat on those multi-million-dollar homes in a very expensive part of Auckland than delivering more homes for families in need. I stand by our government's decisions.
The Honourable David Seymour.
Is the Minister of Finance aware of any other investor that's been around for 170 years, like the New Zealand government, that only ever buys and never sells to get a better deal?
Well, Mr Speaker, as the Deputy Prime Minister rightly points out, that would be the worst sort of financial stewardship, and it is a reflection on the economic capability of others if they're to suggest that we should never, ever decide that an asset is no longer serving taxpayers to its best purpose. It has been the case of successive governments that they assess the value of assets and how they are performing.
Question number 4, Chloe Swarbrick. Just wait for the House to give you the courtesy of their silence.
Ki te Premier, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Will the Prime Minister take responsibility for rough sleeping in Auckland nearly doubling between September 2024 and May 2025, during which his government's emergency housing changes came into effect?
Well, as we've discussed before in the House, I'm very, very proud of this government's progress on removing and getting rid of emergency housing and motels. We've been able to move families and kids into dry, warm homes. This is also a government that cares deeply about the challenges of homelessness, and as that member well understands, they saw an increase in homelessness of 37% after spending $1 billion when they were in government. It's a complex issue. We're doing everything we can to work on that too.
Does he accept the community organisations' concerns reflected in the open letter which I passed in before question time today began, that government choices to cut access to emergency housing, cancel state housing developments, cut funding for rangatahi housing support and weaken tenants' rights are directly linked to more Aucklanders sleeping in our streets, our parks and their cars?
Well, as the member has, we've talked before, we have actually met with key stakeholders in Auckland CBD to see what more we can be doing around the housing, the homeless situation there. These are complex issues with people with complex needs, but this is also a government that has opened up 300 more housing first places. We've got 200 of them going into Auckland, and we also now are talking to the NGOs that we partner with to make sure that they are doing everything they can to make sure they are managing vacancies and vacancy management within their own system, by which of course the government is working with them and providing them with contracts to do so. So there is a concerted effort to do everything that we can. But I just ask the member to stop and reflect on the fact that we have 5,000 fewer families on a wait list waiting to get access to a state house or a community housing provided house. We have 3,000 families out of emergency housing and motels after that being a systemic problem for a long period of time, and we should be very proud about that.
Can he guarantee that every single New Zealander experiencing rough sleeping can access emergency housing or whatever support they may need if they were today to walk into a work and income office?
As we've talked before, this is a government that has actually put together 300 more places, Housing First places. 200 of them are available in Auckland, and we're also now getting the NGOs to record their vacancy rates daily and weekly so that we can make sure that they are actually delivering those dwellings and those accommodations for the people that need it. But we've also put in place $10 million of additional funding for support services for rough sleepers.
Can he guarantee that every New Zealander who is currently experiencing rough sleeping could today walk into a work and income office and get access to the emergency housing and support services that they need?
Well, as the member is aware, and we've talked about in recent weeks, we've also directed MSD to show greater discretion to support people who are in need. But I'd just say to the member again, when you see housing affordability at the best it's been for a long period of time, when you see rents coming down, when you see people off a social housing wait list, when you see people out of emergency accommodation in motels, and you also see support with 300 more Housing First places, $10 million available for rough sleepers, and coordination between government and key agencies, that's good work.
Will the Prime Minister rule out the much discussed move on orders, which community providers have said will result in them struggling to reach homeless rangatahi in Auckland when they are pushed out to further suburbs and afraid to enter the city centre where the services are?
Well, again, as we've discussed this before, the Minister for Auckland has met with other key ministers and agencies. There is a 6-point plan developed in conjunction with Auckland Council and the government and others. We're about housing for rough sleepers. We want increased police and council presence. We want safer public spaces, targeting of criminal behaviour, targeted support services and cleaner streets. And yes, we are exploring move-on orders, and we'll have more to say about that shortly.
Question number 5, Andy Foster.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Oceans and Fisheries and asks, what reports has he received on the fisheries sector?
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Mr Speaker, I have received a report that shows 87% of our stocks, according to a scientific analysis, are definitely sustainable, and it's backed up by the United Nations. We should remember, sir, that over 9,000 people are employed in this sector, 1.5 billion of exports, and despite the best efforts of my critics, the furry Luddites, we stand strong with this industry.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. How will the fisheries reforms help sustainability and increase the value of fisheries?
Speaker, earlier this year we announced some reforms that will make their way through Parliament during the course of next year. Of course, it's important that we have balance and that when catch limits for our various species of fish are set, that it's driven by science, but also we stand against the demonisation and the tainting of the commercial fishing sector. The rules that will be put in place via our upcoming reforms will be consultative, but they will also enhance science to ensure that sectors seeking to taint this important sector do not get a free pass.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. What actions has the Minister taken to increase exports from the aquaculture sector?
Speaker, our government has, during the course of our rule, as a consequence of far-sighted voters in 2023, extended marine farming permits by 20 years. This enabled the industry and the holders of those permits to dedicate capital, take a risk and grow the footprint of aquaculture in New Zealand. It has been a key improver in terms of productivity, and we will be working very closely as a government in a cohesive fashion to ensure that the RMA reforms identified today do deliver for coastal-based industries.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. And how will those Resource Management Act reforms support the aquaculture sector?
The RMA, as our colleague Minister Bishop stated, is broken. It has become a major drain on productivity. It will provide an opportunity for people to go about their business, celebrate the fact that they have property rights, that can be utilised to grow the wealth of the country. We will also ensure that the Coastal Policy Statement, a failed attempt to balance the needs of the coast, does not continue and blight the development opportunities and ensure that ports, aquaculture and other related matters continue to grow. I look forward to the submissions that may come from the industry through the Select Committee process, as I am aware that they hope to see one day a bespoke aquaculture type of legislative outcome to grow that industry.
Question number 6, Rawiri Waititi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by all his government statements and actions?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Did he or the Minister of Police have any knowledge of allegations made against former Deputy Police Commissioner Siobhan McSkimming before November 6, 2024?
In answer to myself, no.
Did he have any knowledge of the allegations made against his former Deputy Chief Press Secretary, Michael Forbes, before June 2025?
No.
Were these cases examples of police negligence, or were he and his ministers being willfully ignorant to the behaviour of their high-ranking colleagues?
No, I'm very proud of the police. I think 15,000 men and women of the police force do an amazing job each and every day. I'm very proud of the work that they've done, removing 38,000 serious violent criminals from New Zealand, serious violent victims of violent crime being down. I'm very proud of the fact they've got 16% lower levels of serious youth offending. Yes, we have 1,900 more people in prison, but they're not out in the community causing pain and suffering to fellow New Zealanders.
Will he commit to initiating a Royal Commission of Inquiry into the New Zealand Police in response to these obvious failures to identify serious misconduct?
No, because this government, as we have moved incredibly quickly to the outcome of what a Royal Commission of Inquiry would generate anyway, which is the strongest statutory oversight mechanism possible, which is, of course, an Inspector General.
Question number 7, the Honourable Dr Aisha Verrall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health. Does he stand by all his actions in the health portfolio? If not, why not?
The Honourable David Seymour.
On behalf of the Minister of Health, yes, particularly the action of setting targets for delivery in the healthcare system. For too long before this government was formed, governments and ministers tended to show their aroha for the patients by throwing money at the problem rather than setting targets for productivity in order to actually get people the results, the vaccinations and the appointments they need in a timely manner, which is this government's action.
Supplementary, which action does he stand by? His cuts to graduate nursing roles or his partial reversal of those cuts?
Mr. Speaker, I can't speak to the Minister's allegations, which seem to be more of an attempt at making social media. What I can say is this government has hired 2,000 additional nurses. I don't know if the member's ever seen 2,000 additional nurses in one place, but that's a lot of nurses.
Does he stand by his plan for digital investment or his unsafe cuts to hospitals' digital systems?
Mr. Speaker, I absolutely, on behalf of the Minister, stand by this government's plan to invest in digitisation. And the reason for that, I happened in my own capacity to be visiting Waikato Hospital a time ago, and they explained to me that as an Aucklander, if I was to be in a car crash in Hamilton, I would need to have my records emailed from Auckland, potentially while I was bleeding out on the table. I asked them, didn't the previous government merge the DHBs together? And they said, well, that was just the letterheads. They didn't do the hard work of investing in a patient record. That's what this government is doing. And yes, I stand by that. Yes, I do.
Supplementary, does he stand by decisions to centralise hiring outside of local hospitals, causing months of delay to doctors' recruitments?
Mr. Speaker, it is certainly true that under the previous government's centralisation and merger of the DHBs, the hiring of staff had to be routed through Wellington, leading to enormous delays. The Minister of Health has reversed that change and decentralised hiring so that the people at the coalface can make the decisions about who to hire. That is actually an improvement, and I'm starting to wonder, Mr. Speaker, if this member's trying to make the government look good.
Is it the case that the Minister is unaware that decision to centralise hiring outside of hospitals, as well as the cuts to nursing graduate roles and digital infrastructure, were all under that government.
Mr. Speaker, that is simply untrue. The simple facts are 2,000 extra nurses, 600 extra doctors. You can't argue with results.
Mr. Speaker.
We come now to question number 8, Cameron Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Economic Growth and asks, what impact will resource management reform have on the economy?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Well, Mr. Speaker, for too long the Resource Management Act has been a handbrake on the New Zealand economy. It has created cost and complexity, headaches and confusion. It has stifled growth and competition, and the changes Minister Bishop announced today will release that handbrake. To improve living standards, create jobs and lift incomes, New Zealand needs to stop saying no and start saying yes. Yes to investment, yes to innovation and yes to growth. And that's what these changes are all about, making it easier, faster and cheaper, whether you're building a deck or a wind farm.
Will these changes improve economic performance?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the changes the government has announced today will improve economic performance in 3 main ways. First, they will lower the costs at each step of the planning system, in fact, reducing dramatically the number of circumstances in which a consent will even be required. This will put a stop to the gravy train of consultants and lawyers that has characterised the RMA. They will help ensure that New Zealand's scarce resources are being used in the most valuable way they can, and they will establish a more flexible and enabling system that promotes innovation, investment, adaptation. Together with other reforms from this government, these changes will help lift New Zealand's productivity, reduce regulatory burdens and get the economy growing.
Supplementary. What effect will these changes have on costs?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the changes announced today will generate administrative and compliance savings for all participants in the resource management system, users of the system, of course, but also local and central government. From the mum and dad wanting to renovate their home through to the farmer wanting to grow vegetables for our plates. Fewer activities will require consents in future, and I'm advised that close to half of consent applications may become unnecessary. There will be fewer hearings, fewer appeals, fewer delays. And economic consultants Castalia have calculated that the net administrative and compliance benefits in present value terms will amount to $13 billion over the next 30 years.
Supplementary. What wider effects will these changes have?
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, cost savings are just one part of a bigger story. Most importantly, projects that under the current system would be delayed, deferred or not happen at all, despite those with capital eager to get started and make things happen, will in future go ahead in a timely way. There are huge benefits, for example, from making housing supply more responsive to demand. Instead of tying up in court proposals for new homes for New Zealanders, the new law will make it faster for them to get built. And there are huge benefits from infrastructure projects in low-risk locations proceeding at a greater pace and scale than they are now, not tied up in the current multi-year delays which have plagued so many government transport projects. And the complexity and uncertainty of the current resource management rules is costing New Zealand in terms of growth, incomes and opportunities. The changes Minister Bishop announced today will get things moving again.
Yeah. Question number 9, the Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Social Development and Employment and reads, does she stand by her statement, quote, our government does not accept that a life on welfare is as good as it gets for our young people, end quote. If so, why?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Louise Hobson.
Yes, and we know that people under the age of 25 on the job seeker benefit are estimated to spend another 2 decades on a benefit over their lifetimes. Our government has far greater hopes and aspirations for young Kiwis than a life on welfare, and we make no apologies for encouraging them into education, further training or employment. That's why we are delivering more early intervention, clearer expectations and stronger partnerships with employers to help more people move from welfare into work. We've seen over 26,000 young people leave welfare for work in the last 12 months. The steps we are taking will put New Zealand and young New Zealanders on a better path.
Why did she launch her community coaching pilot at Youth Inspire in the Hutt Valley, which helps young people into work, and then subsequently cut their funding?
Well, Mr Speaker, as I said in the annual review last week to that member, MSD runs their procurement basis, as most government agencies do, on the all-of-government procurement guidelines, and when they go out to tender for services and for products, they want to make sure that what they are purchasing delivers government outcomes and also provides value for money.
What are the other programs that have been funded by MSD in the Hutt Valley to specifically support young people into employment?
Well, Mr Speaker, what I would say is the provider that is going to be providing the youth job coaching in the Hutt Valley will be announced in coming weeks. And as I said to that member, we have great providers all over New Zealand who are doing fantastic work with young people. That's why we've got 26,000 young people in the last year alone have exited from welfare into work.
Does she agree with Chris Bishop, who said that, quote, Youth Inspire do a great job in our community? If so, why did they have their funding cut when they are the only provider in the area that support young people into employment?
Well, the member's completely wrong. There are other services in the Hutt Valley that deliver services to young people, whether it's driver licensing, the youth coaching is up for renegotiation. And what that member fails to realise is Youth Aspire will continue to have contracts available through MSD.
What message does it send to young people when she cuts the only program in the Hutt that gives them, young people, the skills and confidence to get a job, and even the local National MP is at a loss as to why their funding has been cut?
Well, Mr Speaker, the member is just blatantly wrong. There are other service providers in the Hutt. MSD has run a program, and the program provider that will be replacing the youth coaching will be announced in the coming week. So no, I'm not going to do MSD's job in announcing who they have procured the services from. They are absolutely, because when a procurement is reissued, it is based on the services that MSD is buying. They are buying job coaching for young people. I'm really proud of the work MSD do all over New Zealand. I accept that for individual providers it's challenging when they have a change to their contract, and I'm really excited about that they will continue to provide Hei Potama Rangatahi services. I'd be surprised if that member isn't pleased that they'll continue to do that.
Mr Speaker.
Question number 10, Ryan Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Local Government and asks, what recent announcements has he made on capping council rates?
The Honourable Simon Watts.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. For too long, Kiwis have seen unsustainable double-digit rate rises at a time when they can least afford it. Last week, we said enough is enough and announced that we will cap increases to council rates at a time when the central government, businesses and households are tightening their belts. Councils need to do the same.
That's right. Yeah, very good. Mr Speaker, how will the proposed rates cap work?
Well, Mr Speaker, we've adopted a target band approach similar to the way the Reserve Bank approaches inflation. This will mean that rates increases can only be between 2% and 4% per year. These numbers are linked to the midpoint of the inflation target and long-run GDP growth. The upper band ensures that rate increases remain affordable and sustainable, while the lower band ensures councils keep up with investment.
That's right. Can councils exceed the target band?
Well, Mr Speaker, we acknowledge that unique circumstances may arise in which rates may need to exceed 4%, such as natural disasters. The rates target model allows councils to apply for a temporary deviation from the target band. But let me be clear, deviation will be the exception, not the rule.
What comments has he seen on the government's proposed rates cap?
Well, Mr Speaker, you might imagine that this has been very much welcomed by ratepayers who have been hit hard by rates increases. I'm also pleased to see that even some councillors and mayors welcome this announcement. Thames Coromandel Mayor Peter Revel welcomed the announcement, saying, quote, "The move to a target range gives council a clear and workable framework." Christchurch City Councillor Sam McDonald said, quote, "This is a significant step forward in reining in the cost of living crisis. Our council is up for the challenge and we are already got a program in place and underway. Mr Speaker, a rates cap is a pragmatic policy and I encourage the whole House to get behind it."
Well done. Question number 11, the Honourable Marama Davidson.
Ki te Premier, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Will it be communities and the environment who benefit from his government's pushing through of the Fast Track Approvals Amendment Bill? Or will this solely benefit the corporations seeking to undermine communities and the environment to rush through their projects?
In answer to the first leg of the question, both.
Why is his government further expanding unchecked ministerial power over large-scale projects when the original Fast Track Bill was criticised widely for concentrating power in the hands of ministers without meaningful public or environmental oversight?
I disagree completely. We're very proud of the fast track legislation and the implications that it's now having. We'll be probably about 9 projects that'll be approved before Christmas. I just take the example of the Auckland ports, who needed to build 2 wharfs. It would have taken 5 years under the old RMA, but thanks to the work of Minister Bishop and Minister Jones implementing fast track, it was done in 55 days, and on the 56th day, they started digging.
What is his response then to the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, who said that the Fast Track Bill is a, quote, thinly veiled attempt to guarantee a favourable decision, executive overreach for which no case has been made, end quote, and that there are, quote, no guardrails?
Oh, I disagree completely. What is exciting about fast track is that we are going to get things done and built in this country, and we have been tied up in red tape, green tape, just a bunch of bureaucrats, and we need to unblock the joint and get the show on the road and get it moving.
What does he think it says then about his government when the most controversial amendments in the Fast Track Approvals Bill were only supported by corporations who are current and past applicants, with the other 95% of submitters opposing?
Well, it's actually New Zealanders that are winning because of fast track and because of our RMA reforms, because it means that they'll get renewable energy faster, it means they'll get homes faster, farmers will be able to get on with farming and growing, we'll be able to get hospitals, schools and roads built much quicker. That's great stuff.
Is the Prime Minister simply of the opinion that the government knows best and that communities, the environment and Hapua and iwi all deserve less of a say on fast-track projects than the corporates submitting applications?
No, I listen to the voice of everyday New Zealanders who say it's just too hard to get things done and built in this country. They can't understand why it costs 50% more to build a 3-bedroom house here in New Zealand than it does in Australia, because of our RMA, because of our slow track, because we've been we've clogged the joint up with red tape and green tape. We're getting rid of it. We're prioritising economic growth and we're going to grow.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary question, the Honourable Tama Pūtaka.
Can the Prime Minister please confirm that there are at least 2 Māori-led fast-track projects that have been approved, one at the top of the south called Maitahi and one at West Auckland called Rangitōpuni?
Yes, I can, and I can also confirm that iwi businesses and organisations are beneficiaries of fast track and our new RMA reforms as well. All treaty settlements will be upheld, but they will also be able to use their land as they see fit, exercise their property rights, and to get things done and built.
Question number 12. Ruben Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Media and Communications. Does he stand by his commitment on the 2nd of July 2024 that, quote, the government is taking immediate action to support New Zealand's media and content production sectors, end quote. And if so, what immediate action has the government taken to date?
Well, Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Paul David.
Mr Speaker, I thank the member for the question. Yes, I stand by that statement. And the immediate focus back then was the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill. And of course, as is highly obvious to everybody, circumstances changed somewhat at the end of 2004 with the US presidency changes, and a more cautious approach was adopted. But since then, we've made excellent progress on a whole host of other areas, such as finally passing legislation to remove outdated advertising restrictions on Sundays. And I do want to thank the member and their party for their bipartisan support for that, notwithstanding some snide comments made during the debate. We also made changes to the screen production rebate to help Shortland Street continue on its way. And in a period of intense fiscal challenges, we continued our funding for New Zealand On Air and the screen rebates alongside Minister Wilson. So, and there is much more that I could go into.
Supplementary.
Wait for your colleagues to give you, the whole House to give you the perspective.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
That's why you're asking a question.
Does he stand by his statement that, quote, firstly, the government will progress the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill with amendments to support our local media companies to earn revenue for the news they produce, end quote. And if so, given that other countries have taken steps in that direction, why has the legislation still not had its second reading more than a year later?
Well, Mr Speaker, it's important for politicians to be light on their feet, and that member, of course, did hear the answer to that question in the previous answer, and I've given him the answer, and I think it makes perfect sense. And so I'd encourage him to try and be a bit more light-footed next time.
No, hang on. Wait on. That's not an acceptable thing. You can't determine what he knows. So if he wants to ask the same question over and over, he can. You should answer it over and over as well. Reuben Davison asked the question again.
The same question again?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
If you can't remember it, just move on.
Luckily, I have it written down. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does he still stand by his statement that, and I repeat, quote, firstly, the government will progress the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill with amendments to support our local media companies to earn revenue for the news they produce, end quote. And if so, given other countries have taken steps since, why has the legislation still not had a second reading more than a year later?
Well, Mr Speaker, as I said in my answer to the primary question, that events have changed since I made those statements. And to paraphrase John Maynard Keynes, when the circumstances change, I change. And what else would he do?
Supplementary. How many New Zealand jobs could be protected if the government did what they promised to did what they promised to do more than a year ago and passed acts like the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill?
Well, it's impossible to calculate.
Supplementary. Does he share the concerns of his National Party colleague Greg Fleming regarding the impact of a 25% reduction in funding to Māori media? And if so, has he raised these concerns with the Minister for Māori Development?
Well, we all know that Mr Fleming has a wide range of concerns and he passes them on to us regularly, and we're very supportive of those concerns. What I would say, of course, is that the most important thing we can do for the media is to get the economy growing again so that advertising revenue grows, and that is what our government is absolutely committed to do. And I'd also make the point that there's been a lot of work that's been done in this area, and I encourage Labor to continue on in the spirit of bipartisanship which they showed on the Sundays and public holidays, and there's much more that we can do together.
Supplementary. How can the media and content production sector have any confidence in him when his party didn't even turn up to vote on the only legislation he has introduced to support the sector since he became the minister, and now even his own MPs are second-guessing his government's cuts.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the circumstances the member is referring to, other than to say that notwithstanding all the fiscal pressures we've funded, we continue to fund New Zealand On Air, we continue to fund the screen rebates, and Mr Speaker, we've also put some extra resources into the local democracy and the Open Justice Initiative, which have been great initiatives, and I'm sure will be welcomed right across the sector, and I'd leave it at that. Oh, by the way, no, I won't leave it at that. One thing that we haven't done is waste $20 million on a failed RNZ and TVNZ merger. And I think everybody in the media sector will be happy with that.
Thank you. That concludes oral questions. We'll take 30 seconds for those who have other items of business to go to leave the House quietly without conversations on the way. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Infrastructure Funding and Financing Amendment Bill, first reading.
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
I present a legislative statement on the Infrastructure Funding and Financing Amendment Bill.
The legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website. The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Infrastructure Funding and Financing Amendment Bill be now read a first time. I nominate the Finance and Expenditure Committee to consider the bill. Mr Speaker, over the last 3 decades, house prices in New Zealand have increased more than any other OECD country. According to the OECD's Better Life Index, we ranked 40th out of 41 countries for housing affordability, just in front of the